Well, howdy fuckers, and welcome to today's episode of Western Grunge Tape Deck. I want to start out this episode by giving a shout out to our friends at North Springs Music Festival. This is in Whitleyville, Tennessee from October 8th to the 10th. We have an episode a few weeks back that we did with them, and they are some wonderful folks that are putting on a really great festival. I think it's 3 days, 30 plus bands, only one stage. You've got people like Silverado, Chris Knight, Taylor Honeycutt, a lot of big talent there. So we appreciate the work and the collaboration they've done with us, and we do want to urge you to make the trip out. I think you have to camp, but it's October, so that's a beautiful time to do it in Tennessee. And yeah, if you're able to, snag some tickets to that. I'm joined by one of my dear friends, a mentor of sorts, and someone I am so grateful to have known, him and his talent, Mr. Jason Earle. Thank you for being here.
What kind words? Thank you, Libby. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to get to hang with you.
I know. This is actually mine and Jason's second recording, our first one. We had some technical difficulties, but any chance I get to yap with Jason, I'm not going to complain. So.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we just got to hang the first time, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of spoiled. I get to hang with you again, so let's do it.
No, I'm grateful for it. But Jason, I don't know if we did this last time, but if you want to start out by just telling us a little bit about you, where you're at, what you do, the music you make, what you're involved in, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I live in Florida. I live in Orlando, Florida. I was born in Kentucky and spent the first half of my childhood there, and then the second half of my childhood in Central Florida. I've been in Florida for most of my life. I am a songwriter, a writer, a podcaster. My day job up to this week has been as a public school teacher, and that's something we might get into that is shifting for me because I'm really focused on making music and touring and playing gigs as well as telling stories. So my podcast, The Marinade with Jason Earle, will be 9 years old if you count just from the first episode. The first episode with the great BJ Barham of American Aquarium was released in September of 2017, which is wild to think. So I've been recording the Marinade for 10 years now, coming up on 10 years this October, and that has been my main creative gig for the most part. But lately there's just so much that's been happening musically for me, and I'm incredibly grateful for those opportunities. And it's just something that kind of honestly came out of, I can't say it came out of nowhere because I've worked really hard, but I'm very pleasantly surprised by the reaction to my songs and the fact that people want to hear me play and sing. So there's your Cliff Notes of who I am.
No, I love it. I do have to say, well, I've been lucky enough to listen to these songs early, and I'm stoked to get into them again because I think they are so wonderful and have messaging that everyone, frankly, needs to hear right now. And yeah, The Marinade, genuinely one of my favorite podcasts. I actually listened before I knew Jason personally, and I reached out to you initially to get podcasting tips because I think I love the format, I love the flow, I love how you work, and so I really wanted to get some pointers there. But turns out Jason and I are the same soul in different bodies.
Yeah,
so
20 years apart. Yeah.
Yeah. So it ended up working out. It's been so wonderful. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I love the work that you're doing, and I'm grateful to you and all the Western grunge folks. I think it's important to spotlight independent artists. I think it's important to build community. That's something that you'll hear me harp on over and over and over again, and y'all have built that, right? You're building community and continuing to foster it. So, and I love the work that you do. I mean, like I told you when we talked, we talked shortly after your very first podcast conversation with my dear friend Van Plating, and I would have thought you'd been doing it for 5 years. You know, you
That is
absolutely
sweet.
crushed your first time. So
No, like we've
yeah,
said
it's
before,
not-
Van makes it very easy to have a conversation. She and I also have a lot in common, so that definitely helped too. But no, I love everything you do. In 9 years, that's a big accomplishment. You're like an OG. You've been doing this.
I have been doing this. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about lately. I mean, everybody's got a podcast now, which is not a bad thing. I don't say that in a disparaging way. I think more is better, you know, and let people decide what they want to listen to and what they don't, and what stories they want to consume. But yeah, when I started the Marinade, I mean, it started just because I was writing about music, and I would interview artists, and I would realize that no matter how good of a writer you are, something gets lost in telling the interview story. Now, there are great writers, and I think I'm pretty good at this, but there are great writers like a Marissa R. Moss, for example, who can interview someone and then tell the story, and it comes through the way that the actual conversation does. But one of the things I was realizing is, like, certain topics, certain concepts, artists were really fired up to talk about those things, and you could hear it in their voice even. I remember the moment, like, I was interviewing this guy named Brett Bass, who has a band called Grandpa's Cough Medicine out of Jacksonville, Florida, bluegrass band. And he's a flat picking guitar player, real good guitar player. And I was asking him about just one of my early interviews, and I was asking him about kind of the industry and the business and stuff, and you can hear the moment where I stopped talking about that shit and started asking him about process. Like, his voice uplifted, and I realized, like, oh wait, this is the ticket right here. Like, you can hear the audible shift about halfway through the interview, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this piece and it's gonna be good, but I kind of want to just, like, hear the good and the not so good, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want the natural. That's one of the things that I think connects people to podcasts, is it's so human. And so yeah, I started the Marinade before really anybody was doing what I was doing. Joe Pug, the wonderful Joe Pug, who's been a guest on my show a couple of times, had just started the Working Songwriter. Shout out to Joe, Free Pub Joe. And then also his records, if folks listening probably know his music, and if you don't, he's one of the best doing it. And then Brian Koppelman, who like I've never known personally, but like was sort of my like online mentor, the great Brian Koppelman, who wrote the film Rounders and the show Billions, and on and on and on. He also discovered Tracy Chapman as an A&R executive, and was instrumental in signing D'Angelo to a record deal. Like, guy's lived a life. He had a show called The Moment, and that predates the Marinade. But other than that, to my knowledge, nobody was really doing a deep dive into process, right? And that's what I really wanted to do, in part because I wanted to get better. You know, I wanted to be a better writer. I wanted to be a better songwriter. I wanted to be a better podcaster, and I wanted to pick the brains of the people that were doing it at the highest level. So, yeah, here we are, 10 years after the idea was born, and then 9 years of episodes. It's been a lot of work. It's been incredibly rewarding. There would be no record of mine without the Marinade. I can promise that. Like, there's no way. And I'm just having these magical moments that keep happening in my creative life. I had one last night that I was just sitting there thinking, like, without the Marinade, I'm not sitting here. I'm not sitting here in this, like, having to take my handkerchief out because I'm breaking down because it's so beautiful what I'm witnessing, right? Like, all of these opportunities have come about because I took that leap to start the Marinade.
Yeah. No, I really love that, and I feel the same way. You know, we haven't been doing this as long, but I'm constantly in awe of the relationships I've made, the friendships, the people that I have considered inspirations for years and years, and now I'm getting to have, you know, a real human conversation with them and see, you know, get some insight into their processes. And it's just, it blows my mind, and the opportunities that we've all been afforded because of this. I mean, you know, we just do it for fun, but it's that part that comes along with it is something I'm grateful for every day. So, no, I totally get it, and I'm glad to have met you and other people through this, because I think, you know, your friendship has certainly enriched my life and given me so many perspectives that I'm grateful for. So,
likewise,
no, it's been good. But something I want to ask you, before we get into your album specifically, how did creating this and see it coming to fruition, how does that make you feel after being involved in this space for so long?
It's edifying. Like I think there have been a lot of surprises in this process. This is the first time. It's my debut record. I've been writing songs for a long time. I've been performing consistently for the last 8 years. I've really taken it seriously as a hobby, and now as another career for 3, I guess. And I think last night was another example. Let me tell the story of last night real quick, because I think it ties into your question, and it was really special for me.
Of course.
So about almost a year ago now, I started an open mic here in my neighborhood. What I recognized was a couple of things. One, there were not, believe it or not, Orlando is a pretty big city. There just weren't open mics in the city proper. There was one other one that my friends at Banks Studios and Banks Records run once a month, but there just weren't places to go and play your songs here. You could drive to the suburbs. There are cities around here, Sanford and Winter Park and all these little towns that surround Orlando, but from downtown, that's a half-hour drive. So I knew there was a need for an open mic. But the other thing that I noticed was, like, as a performer who primarily performs original songs, it's kind of hard to go to an open mic and, like, follow a comedian or a poetry reading, or someone's just played, like, a set of Journey covers, and then I'm going to get up there and sing the song about, like, death and where I'm from and my love for my grandmother, right? Like, it's a weird thing. And so I started an original music only open mic called Be Original Open Mic at Barley and Vine Beer Garden, just steps away from where I'm currently recording this. And my goal was a couple of things, but the biggest thing was just building community. I just wanted people to be able to come and share their art and come together. And that has happened. That has happened in a huge way. The list is always full. It's the first Wednesday of every month. It's always full. We have everybody from, like, 18-year-olds to people in their 70s playing. We've got folks that are, male, female, non-binary, heterosexual, homosexual, worlds apart, like people that come from all over. People drive. John DeWitt drives an hour and a half sometimes to play, and John's a killer songwriter. Lexi Long drives an hour and some change, and she's a killer songwriter. I mean, it has exceeded my already pretty lofty expectations for it, right? Well, last night, 2 artists who had met at the open mic, one of whom signed up for Be Original as, like, a way to sort of push himself to get serious about music. And they met in February of this year. Lucas Brandt and Summer Grace. A month or two later, they started writing together, and they just released their debut single on Friday of this last week, on the 7th. And last night, the 8th of August, at Barley and Vine, they played a single release show together. And just that moment, on top of all these other moments that have happened since the record process began, because I can't really separate the two. The original and the record have been coming together at the same time. Has helped me shed a lot of imposter syndrome. It's still there, right? I was watching Lucas play guitar last night, and I was like, God, I got a long way to go to get to that, But and he looks at me as a mentor, and I'm like, buddy. But it has really helped. The process of making the record has really helped me shed imposter syndrome, because it did the thing, right? Like, and I've been reflecting on this a lot. Like, on my Patreon and Substack for the Marinade, I did a piece recently, a video about what it takes to sort of, like, take that step to make the thing, because it's scary, right? Like, who the fuck are you to say you're going to make a record, especially at 44 years old at the time, right? That I was like, my debut record is going to come out in my mid 40s. Like, who do you think you are, buddy? But but what's actually happened is quite the opposite. Is people saying, I love this, I want more of this, and I want to play with you. Like, I have a saxophone player that plays with me regularly now. I have a gig coming up next month where she's going to join me, Lauren Chu, and then my producer Chris Belcher might join me on guitar. Another friend was, I sent him some of my songs. He's like, man, I'd really like to play on your songs. At some point, you have to get out of your own way and go like, okay, wait, what I'm doing is good. People like this, and it's good. And I think, I went through a similar process with the Marinade, and so many of us get shut down by the idea that like I said last night watching Lucas play guitar, I'm not as good of a guitar player as Lucas, but I don't have to be, right? I'm me, I make what I make, and people connect with it. So that's probably been the biggest lesson for me in this whole process. I'm feeling really good about the things that I'm making, and finally accepting, right, that like people want this, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And right now, specifically in the world of streaming and followers and numbers, I think people often forget the intricacies of this scene and just how much goes into it. Because, I mean, when it comes to open mics and people being willing to step up and put those together, that's where a vast majority of people we probably love, that are, regardless of the level of success they're out now, that's where they've started at. And this scene, the independent country music scene, like, it just would not be what it is in any way if it weren't for those people working at each level of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to get started somewhere, and you have to shed some self-doubt and try it, and you have to fail a little bit. I mean, I bombed, like early on when I started playing open mics. There's one famous story, famous in my world, I guess, of like where I was playing an open mic, and I showed up. It was early on. It's just like probably like 2019. So I'm still kind of new at this. Might have been actually a little bit later than that, but it was an awkward setup, right? Like there's a kind of L-shaped bar, and the PA was set up at the end of the bar, the short end of the bar. So the long end of the L is where most people were sitting, and I got there early because at that point I always like to sign up first because I didn't want to have to follow anybody, right? I was still like, I don't want to. You never know. Sometimes people walk into open mics. At my open mic, we have a very warm room, and so all skill levels are celebrated and loved. But you might get a Jordan Folian. Like, Jordan plays sometimes. You get touring acts that come through and play. Patrick Hagerman will just show up and burn the house down,
Yeah.
So that can be intimidating if it's not the right setting, right? And one of the things that I've been intentional about is creating a setting where everyone feels comfortable. But anyway, I played this open mic at this bar here in Orlando, and my wife at the time was there, and she's sitting at the other end of the bar with this dude who was just a friend of hers, who was very handsome. She thought was hilarious. I thought wasn't funny at all, and so I'm up there being vulnerable. She's leaning into him while he's doing like a bad Australian accent or something, and she's thinking it's so funny, and I'm just like about to pour my heart out about my student who got shot in the back in a senseless act of gang violence or whatever. And I'm getting ready. I'm getting my head right. I'm going over my lyrics, and I look around, and nobody's got an instrument but me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, this is like nobody else playing, So anyway, I'm second on the list. The first person gets up and does 10 minutes of comedy.
Oh, wow.
And then I get up and play my sad boy songs, right? And, I'm singing about the government, and then I'm singing about social injustice, and then I'm singing about a girl that did me wrong. That's kind of my MO. And I'm looking around still. Nobody's paying attention. My wife is like leaning into Mr., put another shrimp on the Barbie joke guy. And then there's this woman sitting right next to me. Like right next to me, right? Like here's the PA and here's her. And she's turning around, and she's on Instagram Live or Snapchat or something, and she's got her hand under her eye, tracing like a fake tear.
Oh my goodness.
Filming me playing the songs, right?
That is atrocious.
Yeah, and so then I did okay. I got through it, but like there was barely a clap at the end, right? And then the next guy gets up and does comedy, opens his set with, "Anybody else feel like slitting their wrists now?"
Oh my god. Oh, that is sending me. That's horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
it can be so hard, right? Like you have to develop the ability to go like, I'm gonna get up there and I'm gonna play my songs, and if it doesn't land, it doesn't land. But like, I'm just gonna let it rip,
Yeah.
And that's what I learned in that moment was like, okay, this is really fucking hard, but I can't quit. Like I love it. It means too much to me. I can't let the guy doing the bad Jim Carrey impression with my wife, and the comedian making fun of me, and the other comedian making fun of me, and the other comedian making fun of me, stop me from doing this and pursuing this. So from those origins now to having a situation where people are showing up to my shows and very excited to be there, and that journey has been it has helped me shed a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot and gain a lot of belief in the art that I'm making.
Yeah, no, I could for sure see that. Do you think that you would be not even just the artist, but like the person that you are without those experiences?
Oh, I think I'm definitely a much better person now than I was, 9 years ago, when this creative journey became, longer than that, I guess. I started to, I've always been a writer, I've always been a creative, but it wasn't till really probably about 2012 when I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and met a bunch of creatives and kind of got in a community that I started to realize that I not only was someone who identified as a creative, but that I had to do it, right? That it was a part of who I am, and I think it has informed so much of me the person too. I mean, I think about the people I've had on the Marinade, with very few exceptions. I can only think of one person, and I won't out this person, but like, and if you're listening and you've been on the Marinade, it's not you. There's only one person I can think of that I look back and I'm like, I wish I hadn't had him on the show, because of like what he's revealed about himself character-wise since then. Every other person I've talked to and gotten to know, some of them I've made meaningful friendships and lasting relationships with. I've learned something from them about being a person, and I've learned something about them, from them about growth as a human being, about my moral compass has adjusted as a result of talking to these people who are really incredible human beings and who have been through a lot. I mean, I think about people who, River Shook would be a great example. River's been on the show a couple of times, and they just released a wonderful record a couple months ago, and it's their debut record as River Shook. Well, in the time I've known River, they've gone from being Sarah Shook in a band called and having a band called Sarah Shook and the Disarmers, hard drinking, hard partying, ripping cigs, posting Instagram live about her Tinder exploits and stuff, to someone who recognized and came out as non-binary, who lives their life on their terms now, who stopped drinking, realized that they needed to stop drinking, and stopped drinking. Somebody who I just look at as like such a role model for anybody that's trying to find themselves, that's trying to navigate addiction or mental health challenges, whatever it might be. So the creative journey, and then the writing process too. I just wrote a new song. The creative journey takes on, I think, different modes for me. Sometimes it's I'm writing a bunch of essays, and that's where I need to go. Sometimes it's the conversations that I'm leaning into, and sometimes it's songwriting. Oh, sorry about that for the editing. But the songs that I've been writing lately have been helping me in the last 2 years, especially. Have been helping me process some really heavy stuff. I have a new song I just wrote. It might be my favorite song I've written. Might be the best song I've written. Where I was in Maine hiking with my buddy a few weeks ago, and I was just thinking about my dad. You know, my dad's 83 years old. He's been in bad health for 20 plus years, 25 years or so. He's in the hospital at least once a year. It's really stressful. And I wrote a song kind of like on the hike. It came to me, this idea of like, I have to let go of him before the time itself happens. Like, I have to start processing this. And that was hard. It's really hard, but the songwriting process helped me to work through it. And as a result of writing that song, it didn't fix anything, right? The grief's still there and ongoing, and it will still be incredibly difficult whenever that day comes. But I feel way better equipped right now to handle that heaviness because I was able to work it out in song. So, yeah, I think this whole journey, the whole creative journey, and especially the songwriting journey, has, I think, made me a stronger person.
No, I think that's amazing. And that's something that I think about all the time, whether it be me having a conversation with someone here or I'm at a show. I consider myself a pretty open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not one to shy away from vulnerability or emotions necessarily, but it's one thing to sit here and do that with people you're comfortable with, and it's an entirely different thing to get up on stage and put that out to a room full of people who may or may not understand, may or may not give a fuck, and so that is something that being in this scene, I never realized before, was that just how powerful the vulnerability is, but also how much it takes of you as a person to be able to do that. I think I would, despite me being how I am intrinsically, I think I would struggle a lot with that. I think it's super admirable and respectable.
Well, I think one thing that people forget, and this is true of public speaking too, like I've my whole life been pretty comfortable public speaking. I MC events and I officiate weddings, and I've always felt comfortable up on stage and in front of people, and that goes back to being even a kid. But one of the things I learned early on, and that informs the performing process too, is most people, the overwhelming majority of people, are rooting for you. People don't generally, at least live, maybe on the internet it's different because you don't have to exchange that energy with people. Most people in a room together want everyone to be successful. And so if you're up on stage, people didn't come out to the show to see you suck, right? People didn't come out to the stage and hope you fall flat on your face or look stupid, right? They came to the show to be a part of a community, to be uplifted, to hear some art, and they're rooting for you. And the same thing's true like when people talk about their fear of public speaking, and I totally understand it, but my feedback is always, no one wants you to suck, right? Nobody wants to sit there and watch you uncomfortably stammer through things. And you're not going to, more than likely. You're going to do fine, right? And if you recognize that everyone's rooting for you, then I think it makes it easier to perform and to be vulnerable. Because every single time I perform, Libby, every time somebody comes up to me and says, I connected with this song because, or I connected with this song because, or I connected with this lyric because. Every time. Every single time. And so, they're rooting for you. Like, they wanted to hear that. Like, the song that I've been playing about my dad, it's hard to play. I mean, the chorus says, you don't have to be here anymore. Like, it's a heavy fucking song. And I'm processing my relationship with him and his relationship with my mom and just all of these things, right? But almost everybody in the room, especially if they're of a certain age, is, they're dealing with that too. And so we feel less alone through art. And I think that's the thing about vulnerability is, like, we all want to be vulnerable. Certain aspects of society tell us not to, and it's become less and less popular or cool or accepted to be vulnerable in 2026, even than it was 10 years ago, right? Just given the cultural zeitgeist. Well, fuck that. I'm not going to give in to that, right? Like, I struggle every day. I fight off a panic attack every day. And if it wasn't for therapy and my friends and my support system, I'd be a fucking mess, Yeah. So that's why we go to shows. That's why we make art, is so we feel a little less alone.
Yeah.
And everybody wants that deep down, whether they're willing to admit it or not. Everybody wants it. And so we're all going through shit. And if we're not, then, we're not thinking enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think that something, especially in like the country-ish music sphere, in our community, what really differentiates it from a lot of the mainstream stuff that everyone likes to shit on, I think it is, the substance and the lyrics and the storytelling. I think that's like a big, differentiating component there. But I think that because of the nature of the music, it draws a certain demographic, a certain type of person. And within that community, establishing that, I think, you're going to meet wonderful people who are all kind of like-minded and rooting for you.
100%. I mean, like I've said it a few times and I'll continue to harp on it, the biggest thing that I have gained from this musical journey is community. That's the number one thing I've gained from making music and connecting with people. And the more you do it, I had a really cool conversation with a fellow songwriter who plays the open mic, and he's kind of in a similar situation to me, like middle-aged guy, sort of has been making music for a long time, but just sort of kind of starting to take it a little more seriously and getting inspired. And I think the open mic has, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the open mic has kind of helped him to gain more confidence. And what we were talking about was just like the idea that like the more you do it, the more you meet more like-minded people, right? So the more you put yourself out there, the more connections you make, the more community you build. I just connected last night with another open mic host musician who we knew of each other, but we hadn't had a chance to meet, and we started talking about collaborative ideas, and we're kind of batting around the idea of like a open mic festival, and we don't know what that means yet, right? I just sort of threw it out there. We were spitballing, and I'm going to try to play her open mic this coming Wednesday, and she's going to, next time I do mine, she's going to, after she finishes hers, come on out to be original. And those connections happen. The more you do this, the more you make those connections. Similar to podcasting, right? Like you start podcasting, and then you meet other podcasters and then when you have challenges, you're able to go, hey, how did you overcome this thing? Or how did you, what's the next step once you get to this level of whatever the art is that you're making. And so that's what I continue to learn is like there are so many, you aren't alone. There are so many like-minded folks, right? And in whatever sphere, and in the country kind of space or Americana kind of space, the mainstream stuff unfortunately gives it a bad name. But for every Jason Aldean, there's a John Moreland. And those are the people I want to connect with, is the Morelands, to be clear. Those are the people I want to connect with. And it happens. The more you do it, the more people are willing to connect, and they want to be around like-minded folks, and they want to consume art that's meaningful and that helps them process complex emotions.
No, absolutely. And this is something that we've talked about at length before. And for anyone listening, this is kind of you're talking about the cultural zeitgeist. And I know this is something that's kind of been, at least in my world, on the forefront of conversation. But the importance of community and building that, whether it be through music or any other various forms of art, for me, I found a lot of community in different like social justice initiatives around my city and online, meeting some people and, actually going to meet them and fostering those connections. And I just cannot stress the importance of finding that right now, because we are in a time where I think it's very easy to feel a little doomed and a little isolated and scared. And that is truly, community is the number one thing that's helped me through that. And it doesn't even have to be, like I said, various forms of community you're able to find.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary. And if you're not scared right now, you're not paying attention, right? Like, you should be scared of what's happening culturally and politically. Free speech is under assault. It just is. Not in the way that Joe Rogan thinks it is. In real ways where government is truly working to censor ideas they don't agree with, right? And the thing that they can't stop unless they want to come in and physically grab us is they can't stop us from getting in a room and playing music together, right? Like, unless they want to kick the door down and come in and physically drag us out, which they will if we don't all continue to resist and continue to build. And the biggest act of resistance we can do right now is building community, is look out for each other, spread ideas, make sure that we're having conversations, make sure we're challenging each other's thinking, make sure we're not just in echo chambers, that we're also challenging the predominant thinking, and that we're doing so in a way that is thoughtful, right? Like, so often we have these conversations and we resist in a soundbite. Well, that's not all that helpful. You know, I recently had a conversation with somebody. We were at a brewery. It was one of those beautiful chance moments where, like, my dog Bucket and I were out at this brewery, shout out Cyber Brewing, free pub, and they I love that place. They take great care of Bucket. It's a nice, relaxing, community feeling place, right? They're good folks that run that place. And this dude who I kind of know from, like, the neighborhood, right? I don't really know him that well, but he came and sat down with me because there aren't very many tables, and it was just a very socially aware thing, right? Where he was like, I don't want to take up a separate table. You're already taking up one table. There's only so many tables. It was such a mature, self-aware thing, you know? So often I think people don't want to, in America, don't want to have that communal. It's not like we're friends. We just sort of are peripherally know each other, right?
Yeah.
Well, he sat down. We ended up having this wonderful, like, 2-hour, 2-beer conversation, right? And it turns out he and I agree on almost everything politically, but there were some kind of key things we didn't agree on. Well, you know what we did? We did not have a fight. We did not have an argument. We did not call each other names. We just had a meaningful discussion about how we disagreed with each other. Yeah. And that was and could still be normal, right? Yeah. Like, we can do that. Generally speaking, he and I agreed. We agreed on social justice issues. We agreed on, equality, like the things that really matter, human rights, that kind of stuff. We agreed. Now, how to get there, we disagreed on. Sure. And that is normal, right? Like, maybe I don't have it figured out. Maybe he doesn't have it figured out. But we were able to have a meaningful conversation about it, and that all came from just, like, the community that we have in this neighborhood and the fact that that's the vibe here. It just is. Like, that's, I'm fortunate that I live in Florida, which has a reputation nationally for good reason. Like, if you drive 1 hour outside of the town that I live in, the stereotypes that you hear about are very true. Like, it's just true, okay? In a lot of ways. But here, it's not like that. And in pockets all around the state, it's not like that, right? And it takes sitting down and having those conversations, maybe chance conversations with people that you wouldn't normally have a conversation with, and that all comes from community and having that at the forefront of what we're doing. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had people, and not that I'm like some superior social justice activism person, but I am, like, fairly involved in different things in my community. And I've had people reach out to me and be like, I agree with you, I'm so scared, but what kind of material change or what can I actually do to help something? And that is literally what I tell everyone. I'm like, find, you can look on Instagram, Facebook, find these movements, find people that you, even if you don't completely agree with, like, still put yourself out there and go, because there are strength in numbers. And I also think there's a lot of strength in exactly what you were talking about, which is finding people where it's like, yes, baseline, we're on the same page, but having the nuanced discussion. I think that's how you broaden your perspectives and you broaden your horizons, as long as you approach it with a truly open mind and good intentions. I think that's so necessary. Well, yeah, and you said something in there that I think is important, which is, like, it's not a competition either, right? Like you kind of led that off by saying, you sort of you sort of qualified your activism, right? Your activism is important, Libby. Like, whatever you're doing is important. However we're plugged in, and we each only have a certain capacity. I have a friend a couple blocks away who she is involved in everything, and sometimes I look at what she does, and she has a full-time job and a marriage and the whole bit, right? They're beekeepers. Like, I look at them and I'm like, what am I doing? But you can't do that because I'm doing a lot.
Yeah.
And we all are. I mean, the other day, recently, last week, I guess it's been 2 weeks now, my friend Jen asked me to teach an adult civics class. So I'm a middle school civics teacher by trade. I have a political science degree. I have a law degree. And I've been plugged into civics most of my life in some capacity. I've worked for some kind of governmental organization most of my life. And her niece just didn't know some basic stuff. She's a perfectly capable human being. She's perfectly intelligent. The school system didn't teach her what she needed to know. She's curious now. She's almost 30 and she's curious and she wants to learn. And so they brought a few people over to my place. Everybody brought a bottle of wine. I taught them about the Declaration of Independence. Love that. And in that process, as we were sitting there, there was a couple moments where it wasn't intended to be political per se, right? But everything is a political choice, right?
100%.
Like, saying you're apolitical is a political choice. Saying I don't involve myself in politics, that's a political choice. And what I realized in the moment was, me teaching this civics class and them attending that civics class, that's an act of resistance.
100%.
That's revolution right there in its own way. And, I'm going to soft launch this right now. I'm going to start teaching adult civics classes here in Orlando.
Love!
Yeah.
Jason, that's so exciting.
There's some logistics to work out, but we're going to have it right down at the bar, and I'm thinking about doing it on Sundays before football starts. Everybody come out and get a little education, and then we can, in a very American way, talk about it over football, right?
Absolutely. I love
all
that.
of those things are acts of resistance, and they're important. Yeah. They're essential. They're not just important; they're essential.
Yeah.
It is dark. It is dangerous, and you should feel that way, and you should understand that. But at the same time, it's not hopeless. You and I are having this conversation right now. No one's probably going to come in and rip me out of here, right? They're not yet banning these kind of conversations on the internet, but they will if we stop having them.
No, I 100% agree. I love that you're doing that, because I have people who, I don't say ignorant to be derogatory. I mean ignorant in the literal sense of like you said, maybe public ed failed them, or maybe they didn't grow up in an environment where politics were talked about. And people that are my age, older and younger, that have came to me and wanted me to, explain something to them. And it came from a very earnest place. Like, they just genuinely don't understand. And now their lives are starting to be affected by certain things, and they want to understand. Yeah. And so I think there are probably more of us out there in that boat of, I really just don't get it, please teach me, than people realize, Yeah,
and it's important that one of the things I realized in that moment was there were 4 women there, very successful in their lives by whatever metric you want to measure it, right? Great jobs, on top of their game, just badasses, all 4 of them, right? And there were huge gaps in understanding that they had about some fundamental principles of government. That's not their fault. That is something that just was a failure of a systemic failure. And sometimes I take things for granted because I live in that space, right? Like, if you live in a certain space, you sometimes take other things for granted. You expect that people know things. But the weird thing about civics with the internet has been that, everybody is exposed in a way they didn't used to. It used to be you had to read the paper, right? It used to be you had to make an effort to read the paper, or you had to, the civic system was going to impact you one way or the other. But in order to sort of form opinions about things, you had to make an effort. And now you're just bombarded with opinions, and a lot of those opinions have no basis in fact. And are antithetical to everything that's at the core of what America is or should be, right? And so I feel for people who didn't grow up reading the paper, who didn't, I feel really fortunate to be the age that I'm at, because like, technology has been in my life, my whole life, but like smartphones didn't come along until I was in my 20s. Social media didn't come along until I was in my mid 20s. I mean, at least not in the modern sense, right?
Yeah.
Facebook comes along when I'm like 24 years old. So I didn't grow up with it. I read the paper every day. I read the local newspaper every day. And then when the internet came along, you could access it, but you had to really make an effort. It wasn't screaming at you all the time. And so while I'm still guilty of, doom scrolling and all of the stereotypical stuff, I do subscribe to print, publications, and I sit down and read those, and I leave my phone at home because I know I won't fucking read them. If I have my phone.
Same thing.
I go to the coffee shop or the bar with a physical copy of the New York Times.
Yes. Yes.
Or the Atlantic. If Nathan Evans Fox is listening, I'm sorry, Nathan. I do still read the Atlantic. He fucking hates the Atlantic.
I also like the Atlantic. That's funny.
Yeah.
No,
it's a different thing, and so I feel for people, especially young people who are growing up in a world where they're expected to have political opinions, but they didn't have a chance necessarily to grow up learning how the system's supposed to work, and where it has fallen short throughout the entirety of the American experiment, but also where it's worked, right? Like for every example of how it has failed society. The Constitution has also worked in a lot of ways, in a way to create a more just society, because of community, because of people who believe, because of a lot of sacrifice from people that are much tougher and smarter than me. And it takes all of us, though, right? We need those thought leaders, and then we need the foot soldiers, and we need everybody in between to make sure you're getting truly educated and not just parroting things or firing off, opinions that you don't know shit about. That's something I try to work on, is like, if I don't know something, I ask questions and try to learn about it and try not to opine, right? Like, I don't have everything figured out by any means, and you never will. So it's important to like shut your fucking mouth if you don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm 100% with you. And Jason, you'll probably agree with me on this, but for anyone listening who does want to learn, I would say I try to be aware of the biases of which I consume, because they're definitely there, Same, and I would really encourage people to, any website or org that's ending in like a .edu, a .org, there's some good world reports that are, in my opinion, a bit more unbiased. Seek those sources out, and, like you said, we're not trying to necessarily regurgitate headlines and not know what they mean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, read the article too. I mean, that's another thing I think so many people, I fall victim of it too sometimes.
Yep, me too.
Because you'll get confirmation bias. You'll see something and you'll be like, that son of a bitch. And then when you read the article, it's maybe more nuanced. And it still could be bad, right? It's still still could be something you completely disagree with. But the nuance, harkening back to that earlier conversation, there's nuance to everything. Things are not in black and white. The life is complicated. The world is complicated. Going back to art, like art is complicated, and artists are complicated. I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole here, but like, the great Glenn Hansard passed recently, and I just think he's a genius, and he was a genius, and it was so tragic. And I had never heard a bad word about the guy. I'd always heard he was just such a great guy. And then all of a sudden, this deluge of information about, like, how he treated women, allegedly, and, and then some even more damning kind of stuff is coming out. And I started reading headlines, and I was like, oh, shit, okay, Jason, if you're going to do this, you need to commit to it. Because, just reading the headlines is going to give you one picture. And some of the allegations against Glenn are fucking awful, right? And so I don't want to just assume that they're correct or not correct. I would like to, if I'm going to go down that road, if I want to know, I need to know, and do the best I can to get educated, because I think that's another thing that people do that is dangerous is they say some version of, well, who can you trust anymore? And thankfully, you just mentioned, .orgs and edus, and there's a lot of sources that I trust, but you can get accurate information.
Yeah.
You just have to be committed to doing a little bit of work, right?
And be aware.
Yeah. And I think it's intellectually lazy to say, oh, well, you can't trust anything anymore. Well, I mean, you can't trust anything the president says, but you can trust things that are on NPR. You can. There are great journalists doing incredible work all over the world.
Yeah.
So, you can trust people. You can trust information. You just have to make a little bit of an effort and think critically about it, right?
Yeah. No, I 100% with you. Absolutely. And before I pivot into your album, two things. I also subscribe to, I do the New Yorker, but I get a subscription for Christmas every year.
Love the New Yorker.
And I do read it every week. And they have some cool arts and media stuff too. It's not all just they have a political opinion column, but they have a lot of stuff that's
fiction,
really cool.
The New Yorker's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, so really love that. And also, I don't know, you're not going to be able to see it on here, but this poster that I have behind me, this is from a Tyler Childers New Year's Eve show back in 2019. Yeah. And you mentioned River Shook, and they actually played, there's a Sarah Shook and the Disarmers on this poster.
Oh, dope.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah.
Anytime I can shout out River and the person and the musician, River's been so kind to me for years. I remember, I think you and I've talked about this. Hold on, sorry. Bucket's his paw's been bothering him, and he won't leave it alone.
I feel that.
What are you doing, Bubba? What are you doing?
It's getting better, but I have to keep I have to watch him like a hawk.
My dogs do the same.
Because it doesn't take long for the irritation. I have a vet appointment tomorrow, and I'm trying to avoid spending fucking $300.
Yeah.
And he's just for about an hour, Bucket will be like, "You're right, Dad," and then the next hour, he's like, "You're not paying enough attention to me. We're going to the vet, baby."
No, that's literally how being a dog owner is. That's not
He's like, "Shit, we might go to the emergency vet today. How much you want to play?"
Oh, funny.
But yeah, River's been so kind to me, and that's another example. Getting to music and community, so kind and encouraging to me from years. And what I was gonna say was, there's another example of how like-minded folks, how many like-minded folks there are, and how sometimes we feel a little bit of hope and despair, and we don't realize how much community is around us, right?
Yeah.
And then also how much we kind of can potentially build up thoughts in our heads about people. The first time I talked to River, this was back in the Sarah Shook drinking days, and I just thought River is if folks don't know who we're talking about, River's a very strikingly attractive person physically, and then really talented songwriter, and back then had a hard partying badass attitude. And so I kind of went into that conversation a little intimidated. I was this person's really smart, super attractive, and could drink me under the table. And and then we sat down, and they couldn't have been cooler and sweeter and less intimidating, right?
Yeah.
But that's just a quick River Shook plug and aside, is that they're just the coolest.
No, I also love them. It made my heart happy when you first mentioned them, because I was like, oh yes, I'm familiar. Okay, so pivoting into your album, before we dive in song by song, because there's a few that I loved all 5 of these and have thoughts on all of them. But if you want to give me a preface or an overview on what this album is, kind of how it became.
Yeah, for sure. So the record's called For Ivanel. It's named after my grandmother. My grandmother is my hero. She's the daughter of sharecroppers from Adair County, Kentucky. And she's the greatest influence on my social, personal, and political life. It took a long time for me to recognize that, but I would stretch that to even say my musical life too, even though Grandmama doesn't play an instrument, isn't a singer, isn't really musically inclined, and doesn't listen to much music. But what I realized in making the record was basically I initially just set out to record the 5 songs that I feel like everyone, at least up to that point, everyone, when I play them live, they connect with those songs, right? So there wasn't, I'm a big fan of like concept records, and I'm a big fan of albums as a whole. Yep. For me, initially, this was just an effort to like finally shed the imposter syndrome and record my music. Because I was playing a lot of shows and people were asking me like where to find my music, and I'd just be like, here, like at the next gig. And so I played a show last October with Adam Cotton, Lexi Long, and Jessica Hope in Jacksonville. It was in the Round. Folks listening, if you don't know what that is, it's a Nashville style show where you have songwriters on stage and you take turns playing songs, right? So I was third in the rotation, and I'm listening to these incredible songwriters and players. Like all 3 of those folks are just wonderful, and singers. And then I would play, and I was gauging the reaction of the crowd, and then the reaction of my fellow songwriters, and realizing like, oh shit, I belong on this stage. I think Adam's a much better songwriter and singer and guitar player than me, but I didn't feel like a fish out of water, Right. And and then I allowed myself to realize like I'd had that feeling a lot more often than I was willing to recognize. And so that kind of sparked okay, it's time to get off your ass and make the record. And then when I started playing, I think part of why I chose the 5 songs that I chose is just like I'm comfortable with them, right? Like people react well to them. I'm proud of them. I've always been proud of them. If I don't have time to really prepare for a show, if something pops up and somebody wants me to open or whatever, those 5 songs are going to be on rotation. Those are the ones that I feel comfortable in my voice and my playing and everything. But then once we recorded it, I was sitting with it, listening to the mixes, I realized, oh wow, Grandmama's fingerprints are all over this. Like whether I didn't realize it in the moment, but I am the person I am now and the creative I am now in huge part because of my grandmother. I would sit, like she lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky for a lot of my childhood, and she had this little duplex. A couple years ago, I went back there, and it's still there, and I got to meet the family that lives in her duplex. But I would go and I'd sit. There weren't a lot of kids in that neighborhood. It was, in fact, there wasn't a lot of housing around there at the time. It was kind of out this sort of suburban sprawl kind of road, near the interstate, and we would go there for weeks at a time. My family would in the summers, both when we lived in Kentucky and then once we moved to Florida, we'd make the trip up to visit Grandmama. And this is the 80s and early 90s, so late 80s, early 90s. So there was cable TV, but not 200 channels, right? There were 12 channels, and you can only watch Bob Ross so many times, on public access or whatever, right? And then I had a original Nintendo NES system, right? And I played, Duck Hunt and Super Mario Brothers and a couple of those early games, but I wasn't much of a gamer, it wasn't my thing. I like to read and I like to listen to music, and my grandmother had this record player and an 8-track player. And she had Willie Nelson and Neil Diamond and Merle Haggard and Jerry Lee Lewis and the Wanted the Outlaws record, and I would just sit in front of that record player and play record after record and read the liner notes. And nobody was playing music around me, and I, at the time I wasn't playing music, but I just kind of became obsessed, And then, and as I was making the record, I realized like the origins of my obsession with music and love for music and also my musical education. You can't get much better as a songwriter, a much better musical education than listening to Johnny Cash's, Live at San Quentin 400 times a summer, and performance for that matter, right? Or the live Jerry Lee Lewis record that she had. Those songs, all 5 of the songs on the record, are just so deeply informed by my grandmother in some way or another.
I really love that. Yeah, no, I think the older I get, the less I underestimate the influence that my family had on me, because, I'm not an artist per se. I don't play music, make music, but I'm definitely a connoisseur, and my dad would sit me down. He'd have his laptop in his lap, and I would sit in the floor in the recliner next to him with my head up on the arm of the chair, and he would show me all these people, how dads on YouTube concert footage. my dad was very much on that, and not even just the music itself, but he was very adamant on me watching a lot of Appalachian documentaries, Harlan County, USA, learning where I'm from, where I come from, and how life used to be. So yeah, the older I get, the more I recognize the importance of that and how much influence it truly had on me. So yeah, definitely in the same camp there.
Yeah, for better and for worse, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't choose where you're born, you can't choose your family, but it's a part of you regardless. And I think I've come to grips with that a lot as I've gotten older, and I've identified more with Kentucky as I've gotten older. Because I spent the first 8 years of my life there, and then we moved to Florida. And for a lot of my life, I would tell people that I was born in Kentucky but mostly raised in Florida, and that's not true. It's about half and half, really.
Yeah.
8 years versus 10 years. So there are formative years I spent in Kentucky, and then there are formative years I spent in Florida. And I'm both, I'm a Floridian and I'm a Kentuckian, and all the good that comes along with that and the not so good that comes along with that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And the chip on our shoulders that comes with that, right?
Most definitely.
Right?
Most definitely.
Don't say a bad word. I can criticize where I'm from, but don't you fucking dare. You get Kentucky out of your mouth.
That's exactly how I feel. No, that's funny. Well, your first song here, Welcome to Florida. I love this one. And it's funny because upon listening through these again, which there's a few that I replayed in the first place, but listening to the song again, I was like, oh, this is funny. This is tongue-in-cheek, which is very Jason. And that's something that, beyond my first time listening to it, I was like, yeah, this is hilarious, but also painfully accurate. And I think I love any song like that. And really that can be said with all of your songs. I value something that makes you think a little bit, makes you, ponder on whatever the subject matter is. So yeah, love this one. Think it's a great opening track.
Thank you so much. I wrote that right after the Don't Say Gay bill was passed here in Florida, passed the Florida House. Most of that law has been struck down by federal courts. It's just blatantly unconstitutional. And if you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to go, folks listening, into too much detail about it. But you should look it up because it's a really dangerous anti-free speech, anti-queer law. And I was just pissed. One of the things about living in Orlando, this is a very queer-friendly city. We have Disney. It attracts a lot of interesting folks from all around the world. We have developed a reputation as being we have a huge Pride celebration in October every year. The whole city comes together, huge parade. I've gotten to march in it with my queer friends, and when that bill passed, it felt like an assault on my friends, right? And one of the things that's been important to me most of my adult life is once I recognize that being a cisgender, heterosexual, white man in the South comes with an enormous amount of privilege. Yeah. My life isn't easy by any means. It's not I have my challenges too, but as far as structurally, I've got so much advantage. Yeah. And I can say things that other people can't say. And I need to be the voice for the voiceless as much as I can, whatever platform I might have. So I remember sitting there just with my then my life then with my then queer wife, sitting there thinking like, these motherfuckers, like it felt like an assault on my family, right? And so I started writing the song, and I love songs that I'm glad you get the humor in it, right? Like the song opens, "Welcome to Florida, land of the free, where you can do most anything if you look like me." And playing it live is a lot of fun because that line lands because look at me. In a lot of ways, I'm a pretty stereotypically white straight dude. And so like playing that song, when I started playing it, when I started like fucking around with it, and it kind of poured right out of me. It just sort of, this needs to be in a major key. It needs to be upbeat. It needs to be somewhat tongue-in-cheek because otherwise it's just going to be me just yelling at Ron DeSantis. And that's not all that compelling, right? Like, if we're going to do a protest song, I've heard, this discourse has been something that has come up a lot lately is like, and specifically I've heard it as criticism of Jesse Wells, who I like a lot, and I'm not particularly critical of. But one of the criticisms that people have of Jesse is that they say he just sort of, I've heard people say he just sings the news, right? And I understand that criticism. That's fine. I think for me, oftentimes my protest music is fairly on the nose, but I'm not just singing the news. Like, I am trying to add some humanity to it and put people in the shoes of the people that are affected. And with Welcome to Florida, I hope what I accomplish, especially with that first verse, is to say, no, I'm not the target of this. Other than that I'm a citizen and I give a shit about my fellow citizens and I care about free speech, truly care about speech. I'm almost a free speech absolutionist. Where I believe you should be able to say whatever you want. There are consequences to your speech, but the government shouldn't be the one censoring that, is how I feel about it, right? And so what I hope to accomplish with Welcome to Florida is, one, shed a light on things, too, because I think sometimes people don't realize how rough it's gotten here. Florida is positively dystopian outside of certain pockets. I mean, it's gotten really fucking weird down here. And I think people think they understand that, but don't really understand that. I'm seeing it on a daily basis. I'm seeing it as a teacher. I see it on the front lines of just how straight out of 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 or any of those novels that I grew up reading that either prepared me for this moment or made me reactionary in this moment. I don't know, because I read them all. That was like a popular thing in the 90s, was dystopian novels and films, and I watched and read them all, and I went, well, fuck, I don't want that. And that's what we're living in Florida right now. We're with the cameras and all the stuff that the writers warned us about. So my goal with Welcome to Florida is to hopefully engage people in a way that is kind of shedding a humorous light on things, but also is informing, because I'm not sure most people realize, how rough it's getting down here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when I think about my favorite songwriters, there are people like John R. Miller and Pony Bradshaw, and if you want to even go back to people like John Prine, a lot of their messaging is, like we've said, a little tongue-in-cheek, and sometimes I even think leaving a little breathing room or room for interpretation on the part of your listener, I think that can make the music all that more compelling. So
I totally agree. Yeah, let the listen. Right, I totally agree. I mean, if you're shoving it down somebody's throat, it's not going to be as powerful, right? Put them in the driver's seat, like put them in the situation, and then let them decide what path they're going to take. That's hard too. I mean, I'm just acknowledging, like I'm still learning that process, and I'll probably forever learn it. I have a song that didn't make the record called "The Insurrectionist," and it's just sort of it was inspired by this like daydream about a neighbor who I just thought was like the sweetest old man, and then during the 2020 election, he put MAGA signs up. And it just kind of shocked me, because he was like this old man in his garden, and he just would wave at everybody, and everybody loved him. He put out, his wife would put out, she'd make stew, and she'd put bones out for the dogs,
Cute.
from the stew that she made and stuff. And then right after January 6th, he just disappeared. And I don't know that he was involved in January 6th. I just thought it was like, it made me think about like how many people, regular ass people that like garden and leave bones out for the dogs and wave to everybody and always smile, might be harboring some really awful things. And there's a human element to it, right? And so when I write a song like that, whether it's Welcome to Florida or The Insurrectionist, or we'll talk about Brenton Butler, the humanity of it, I think, is something I try to keep at the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. And I just to speak on the totality of this album, I think that I do love, obviously, the resistance music and that aspect of it, because, like I mentioned at the start of this, I think that is so important for people to hear right now, not only to become informed, but also to find solace in knowing I'm not alone in my feelings. But also with this, something that I have really been drawn to, especially, you know, I live right outside of Cincinnati. I'm like 2.5 or so hours from home. You talk a lot about home and yearning and, you know, where you come from. And I've been drawn to a lot of that myself because, you know, Cincinnati's not southeastern Kentucky. So,
right.
You know, I miss that. And I
sure
miss
as hell ain't.
No. And so I think this is such a perfect blend of what a lot of people are feeling right now, me included.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad you feel that, and you know, I think a lot of, I've been reflecting on this too, and I wrote about it on the Substack and the Patreon. Folks can find Marinade, the Marinade over there, and I was just writing about like identity, because I think we can get, one of the songs on there, Montana in the Spring, is a love song, and you know, I am very guilty of being a romantic. I'm a lover boy, and and I've been that way my whole life. But what I've noticed, I've been mostly single for a couple of years now, and what I've done is it's given me time to do a lot of reflecting, and just thinking about me outside of a relationship and outside of, you know, whoever I'm with. And what I realize is that for a lot of my life, I gave up a lot of my identity. Maybe unconsciously, to the person I was with, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that I definitely did in my marriage was I gave up a lot of my identity as a Southern man and as a Kentuckian, because she wasn't from the South, and she was quite honestly prejudiced against the South. And I was having a conversation with a dear friend recently, actually, who is originally from Maine. And he was admitting his own prejudice against the South, specifically in the context of his prejudice against the drive-by truckers. And, you know, them's fighting words, you know, to me, right? But in all seriousness, it led to a productive conversation. And he's a comedian, and he made a joke. He said, like, "You're my South friend." You know, like I can't be prejudiced against the South. I got a South friend. But what's happened to me lately as I've spent time alone is just recognizing which parts of my identity are important to me, and where I'm from is important to me. And it's not always good. There's a lot of not so good. But in music, what I try to do is celebrate the place while also hopefully not overly romanticizing it, which maybe I don't do that on Adair County. I might be romanticizing Adair County a little bit, but I don't know. We can talk about it. But I do think that, like, it's important to me to acknowledge the not so good parts of it while also not running away from where I'm from.
Yep. Yeah. That reminds me of a James Baldwin quote I'm sure you're familiar with. And this is me paraphrasing because I can't remember his exact verbiage, but it was something like, "I love America, and that is why I reserve the right to criticize her perpetually."
Yep.
And I think that's what true love is, and true acknowledgement. So
100%. Yeah. I mean, of course, you can't get better than quoting James Baldwin.
That's definitely not. No. All right. So Brenton Butler, this song, when I first listened to it, I was pretty taken aback. And this was a story that I later learned is based off of a true story that I was not familiar with. And I, like we talked about, you know, in our episode that didn't work out, I think I mentioned Trayvon Martin and a lot of the racial injustice that exists within our current police system. I think for me, that was truly the beginning of my political awareness and the beginning of me really trying to dive in and understand what's going on, especially in a world that I don't witness firsthand. You know, at the time I was living in London, Kentucky, and there's like maybe 2 black kids in my entire high school, maybe.
Yeah.
So like this, this really struck me, and I was in awe of the way you were able to articulate it.
Thank you so much. That's the oldest song that I still play. I had written songs prior to Brenton Butler, but that's the one that has stuck. It's gone through a lot of drafts since I first wrote it, but it seems to be the one that resonates the most with people. I think part of it is that Brenton's a real person, you know, it's a real character. My own education in that way, you know, I grew up in a very conservative, racist environment. Racial slurs were thrown around in my family, in my house. The culture in all the not as much in Kentucky because of the similar issue that you're talking about. Like the places that I grew up in Kentucky, there just weren't black people around. When we moved to Florida, my dad went to the principal of the elementary school, and he said, "Listen, we want Jason to like get adjusted to multicultural life, and you know, we want him to be, you know, a person of the world, but like we don't know if he's seen a black person." You know, and I was 8. So like, you know, and so it took a long time for me to recognize what systemic inequality was, what systemic racism was, and a lot of things weren't taught properly to me, right? Like, the Civil War was taught as like the war between the states, and a war that was fought over states' rights, and all this kind of really garbage, lost cause nonsense that I grew up on. There were Confederate monuments all around. I didn't know the origins of that. I didn't know that those came along much later and were designed to intimidate black people. You know, there's all these things, and some of the music I was consuming too as a kid, like, you know, Charlie Daniels Band was one of my favorite bands. And
we were all spinning David Allan Coe back in the day. So.
Yeah, seriously, like the South's Gonna Rise Again kind of narrative, you know, in country music. And, you know, these are all things that it was just baked into who I was. Yeah. And it took getting out of Ocala, the town that I lived in Florida growing up, to the big, open-minded city of Jacksonville, Florida. Not exactly known for its progressive nature, but for me, that was the big city, you know, and spending time in Jacksonville and in Orlando started to expose me to ideas. And really, it was a little bit later in life, like going to law school changed a lot for me. Going to college in Gainesville was one thing, and then going to law school changed a lot for me because I started to realize firsthand, right? You start studying these things and you see the inequality in the system. So Brenton Butler was born out of 2 things. One, me procrastinating from studying for the Florida bar exam. And the second was I had a criminal procedure class. And in that criminal procedure class, we watched the documentary Murder on a Sunday Morning, which tells the story of Brenton Butler, a 15-year-old kid, black kid, who was just walking down the street in Jacksonville, Florida in the year 2000, going to get a job, trying to go get a job. And he's stopped by the police. And he's identified as the killer of this tourist, older white tourist from Georgia. And they beat a confession out of him. And if not for heroic public defenders are fucking heroes, y'all. Like, they don't get paid enough. They work crazy hours. They don't get respect. And they save lives, you know, like change the trajectory of lives. These 2, Ann Fennell and Pat McGinnis, these 2 public defenders, worked tirelessly to expose that Brenton, there's no way he committed this murder, right? He was just black in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it led to some changes in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Jacksonville still has problems. It's still got a bunch of issues with policing. But that documentary is incredibly powerful, and when I was sitting there thinking about it and going through all this, the pain of the bar exam studying, I got the melody in my head, and then all of a sudden I kind of when I got home, I sat down and started playing, and that was really the first song that I ever wrote that I was like, oh shit, when I started playing it for people. people were reacting, not just like, oh, we like you, and you're the guy with the guitar at the party. It was like the first song that I wrote, and that's almost 20 years ago now, 16 years ago, I guess. That was the first song I ever wrote and played for people that connected in a big way, that made me go, oh wait, maybe I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can absolutely see how that would be the case. I mean, it was certainly the case for me listening to it. So, yeah, I think that's fascinating. And I, like we've talked about before, a very similar experience on my end, going to college and law school. I was very lucky, I think, in my upbringing in southeastern Kentucky, because my family was very much a blue dot in a red sea. And so I was like, my grandfather, who essentially raised me, was a union president, and I was out on picket lines when I was, a baby, and we campaigned for Obama knocking on doors in 2008, and I was involved in that. Like, I was very lucky that my firsthand experience was a little different, but the environment wasn't. It's very much the same. So, yeah, listening to this, it made me think a lot about all of that.
I'm glad, and I hope it lands for other people too in a similar way. I mean, because I think sometimes, especially we talked about the cultural zeitgeist earlier, I think a lot of times, because it's work, right? To especially if you grew up like I did, and I'm not patting myself on the back saying this. I'm just telling you the reality of it. Is like, if you were raised to be a bigot, to not be a bigot is work. It just is. Like, you have to continue. If that's what was programmed into you, you have to constantly do the work. You need to read the books. You need to ask the questions. You need to acknowledge when you say something or do something that is not right, that it might be prejudice or racist, or we do things all the time or say things all the time that we don't realize sometimes is insensitive, And a lot of people who, if you don't do that work, then you do it a lot, because that's how the system is programmed. Like, it's baked into the system, right? Inequality is baked into the system. And so you have to do the work. I've seen it happen. Like, I have a friend who I worked with at a school here in Orlando, and the 3 years we worked together, like, he really started to be more thoughtful about how he discussed things and how he treated people, and he became racially and culturally much more sensitive. And then he left, and for 2 years he worked for a private business, private security business. And it was like, you see those like photos of unoccupied buildings, and how like nature will reclaim them in like a short amount of time, right? They're covered in vines and grass and everything. The same thing happened to this guy with racism. It was like a year later, he was like, had like a MAGA flag, and it's just wild to me, because I remember sitting there having conversations with him dissecting Kendrick Lamar lyrics a year prior, like, so you have to do the work, and
you do.
And a lot of people don't want to do that work, and I understand, but that's not an excuse. Like, I get it, it is work, and you have all these other things you're worried about, and it's easier to just sort of stick your head in the sand. But to me, I can't live like that. Like, I have to keep doing the work.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it takes a degree of accountability that, as just innately prideful humans, we have a hard time with. And I think, just admitting I was wrong. I receive quite a bit of criticism from other leftists because I think they see it that I afford maybe too much grace with people, but I think my upbringing really has a lot to do with that, because it's and I know you probably feel the same way. It's super hard to reconcile, like, who this person is. I know them to be good. They would give the shirt off their back, but they also harbor these just hateful, just literally, there's no other way to put it, hateful views. And it's like, how do you meet the two? And you know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you reconcile that?
One of the reasons that, like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Libby. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I think there are very few people left in my life, other than family, who are truly, like, far right-wing fascists.
Yeah.
But they are there. And part of what keeps me hanging on is I've seen people change, and I know the journey I've been on, right? So
Yeah.
I can't give up on people, because if somebody had given up on, middle school Jason, then, or high school even Jason, who was more progressive than middle school Jason, but who still was pretty conservative, or even college Jason, right? All the way up through my 30s, I would say, like in my early 30s, like a switch flipped, where I started to realize, like, oh wait, I don't know, I'm ignorant about a lot of this stuff. I don't know a lot, and I need to get educated about how deep systemic inequality runs.
Yeah.
But also that part about, I mentioned my song "The Insurrectionist" with that neighbor. My hiking buddy is a Trump supporter, and it's so confusing to me, because he's one of the best people I know. He loves his family. But he does harbor some really hateful things, and I can't give up on him because I love him, and I just feel like he's too smart and too kind to continue going down that path. And, like, yeah, he's 45 years old, but, like, people can change. I saw my dad change. Until Trump came down that escalator, I swear to God, my dad changed dramatically. Like, in his 70s, right? My father, who my whole life was racist, until Trump said it's okay to be racist, right, and made it very popular to be racist, my father had changed. Like, he said something super racist about my students, and I got pissed at him, and he came out and apologized to me and said he'd work on it, and he did. In his 70s, right?
Yeah.
People can change, and, we have to temper our expectations, I think,
Yeah.
But, like, my father's not totally rotten to the core.
Yeah.
He's got some really rotten beliefs, but he's not, like, irredeemable, right?
Yeah.
He's not like fucking Hannibal Lecter or something, right? To borrow from Trump, right?
Yeah.
The late great.
No, I am with you 100%. It's a difficult thing, and like I said, I was raised as kind of an anomaly from where I'm from, but I also do recognize the work, like you said, that unpacking all of that and dissecting that takes, because that's just reality for a lot of people. So, we can keep rolling. Montana in the spring. I'm also a lover girl to my core, and so if you want to speak on this and where this song kind of derived from.
Yeah, it came out of the lowest point in my life. That it's a bright spot during the lowest point in my life. I went through a divorce. I did not want to go through a divorce. My ex left me, and I, to this day, don't totally get it, Now, they do say men tend to not see it until it happens. But I'm a pretty reflective guy, and, like, I was willing to do anything to salvage that relationship, and she wasn't. And so I was devastated. I genuinely did not think I was going to survive. Like, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it, not because I miss her, but because I know what I've overcome, since then, and how, if anybody's listening and going through something similar, you'll get through it. You will. Yeah. And it feels like you won't. And people told me that, and I didn't believe them. I was like, but you will get through it. It's just, you have to wade through the muck. And what I did was something that I don't recommend you do if you ever get divorced or go through a big breakup, which is I jumped right into another relationship. And, this woman was like, everything that, and this is fairly typical, I think, with people, is like everything that was missing in my relationship with my wife, this woman provided that in spades, right? Like, physical intimacy is really important to me. It was missing in one relationship. It was hyper present in the other. I like, honestly, my mom cooked all the time. She took care of the house. I do that stuff. Like, I'm not a traditional misogynist in the way that the woman needs to do it, but it feels fucking good when somebody cooks for you.
Right. No,
and,
totally.
like, and so she would cook for me, and she was a hell of a cook, and she loved doing it, and I'd do the dishes. We just jumped into playing house, we pretty much moved in together. But before we got serious, there was a moment where we kind of, like, I think we both realized that there were feelings there, and we had just been friends, and just, I think we were both trying to recognize that I wasn't ready for anything. But there was a night we spent the evening together, and then the next day I went to Jacksonville to see BJ Barham play a solo show. And if there's an influence on my live performance, it's BJ fucking Barham. I think BJ solo, if you haven't seen him, go see him solo. It is a masterclass in storytelling and performance. The songs speak for themselves, but also that dude is so funny.
Yeah.
It's so engaging on stage. I could listen to him without the guitar. You know, I could listen to him just talk. He's up there talking, and I'm crying, right? He's telling a story. I cry at every BJ Barham show. He wears it like a badge of honor, you know?
Me too.
I think he even has merch that says BJ Barham made me cry in public. And I'm sitting there watching BJ, and I have my notebook, as I always do, on me. And this, like, the night before came to me, and, like, I was wearing a jean jacket, and it smelled like incense because this woman, like, was always burning incense, you know? So my jacket smelled like incense, and I just thought about the kindness that she was showing me in this really dark moment of my life. And then I had tried to advance things romantically early on in our friendship, and she was like, whoa, that's not what we're doing here. And so there's a line in there about that too, about the idea of, like, you know, my intentions might not be totally pure with this woman, but I'm respecting that boundary, and I'm also, like, hoping she changes her mind, you know, which she did. But like, you know, just, I hadn't felt love like that in a long time. You know, I hadn't felt someone, and it didn't work out for a lot of reasons, and we weren't good for each other. But for those, like, 5 or 6 months, most of those 5 or 6 months, especially that early month or two, what it showed me was what was possible, right? Like, what I could expect from a relationship. You can't expect it to be perfect, obviously, but, like, it made me recognize the things that I need, you know? I don't need someone to cook and clean for me every day. I do that on my own, and I'm happy to do it for somebody else. But I do need it sometimes. You know, I need you to make me dinner sometimes. You know, and I do need physical intimacy, and I do need to sit on the couch and read a book together. You know, that was missing in my 10-year relationship. We never did that. This woman and I would sit on together on the couch, soft music playing and reading while the incense burns. It doesn't get much better than that to me. You know, like, that's fucking heaven right there to me. And so what I realized with the song is sort of this romantic ideal, you know, like, this is, she challenged me a lot too. You know, there's the line in there where she says, you should really eat meat. And that was all from that same night before, where she was like, I was wearing a James McMurtry shirt that said, it's the song Canola Fields. Do you know that song?
Yes.
It's one of my all-time favorite songs. It's fucking brilliant. Like, he's one of the greats, but, like, that particular song is maybe my favorite of his. And so I had a James McMurtry Canola Fields shirt on, and she's, like, kind of adorably kind of grabbed me, you know, by the shirt and was like, you should really drive through canola fields in Montana in the spring. And I don't know, it's just, she spoke in lyrics. There's another song that I wrote about, inspired by her, called My Love Speaks in Lyrics, that always does really well live. That didn't make the record, but it will be eventually on a record. Because I just found myself, when I was around her, just writing down things that she said, because it felt like she spoke in lyrics, you know? And so a lot of the lines in that song are just things she said, you know? She probably doesn't co-write, but...
No, that's very cool. And I think that, you know, you bring up a very important point. And this is something that I'm learning and digesting, you know, dating in my 20s, is that, you know, I'm also, like, a relationship person. Not all of them have been super long term in my 20s, but, like, you know, I have kind of went from long-term-ish relationship to long-term-ish relationship. And I think that it's so easy for us to get kind of, you know, hurt and bogged down, and you think about the negative things that come out of this relationship, because that's easy to do, especially when you're, like I said, hurt. But I think that there is so much to be learned in all of that, in every person you meet, every person you know, share your emotions with and you have feelings for. I think that there's always lessons to be learned, and I think it's important to do that, you know, especially someone my age. It's like, how are you ever going to know what you want or what you need if you don't do that? So
yeah, it's hard too, right? Because you don't want to, like, go through bucket some chew on his tennis ball, fuzz all over his rascal. I think in my 20s, I guess I would have been just about your age, maybe a little bit older when my first very serious relationship. We had been together consistently for 4 years, and we had dated kind of off and on for 2 years prior. So, at that point, that's a pretty significant part of your life. And and this woman was, to this day, I have nothing negative to say about her, right? Like, she's incredible. I mean, beautiful, smart, funny. We did sit on the couch and read books together, all the things. I mean, but she wanted something out of the relationship that was different from what I wanted. She was ready to get married. She was ready to have kids. She was ready to move home. And I just wasn't ready for that. I realized in the moment I wasn't ready for it, and that's okay, and I learned a lot from that relationship, and I didn't handle some things well. I didn't handle the end very well. She deserved more than what I gave her at the end in terms of explanation and patience and kindness. And I learned from that, and I've tried going forward to provide that for anybody, to be more mindful of how people are feeling at all stages of the relationship. But I think the thing that I've learned in the last 3 years since the divorce was like, okay, I put up with a lot of things. Like, you have to compromise in every relationship, but you also have to figure out your non-negotiables. And there were some non-negotiables that I now recognize at the beginning of the relationship that I negotiated, because I was in love, and I am a romantic. And if you're a romantic, and you will give up a lot, right? And you can't. You have to, like, the thing that I've learned is, like, there are just certain things. I'm not going to be happy if I don't have X, Y, and Z. And I know what those things are. And so I've been very serious about it. And so I think Montana in the Spring encapsulates a lot of that. It encapsulates a lot of, like, what are non-negotiables for me. I want that moment. Did not last with that woman, but I want that moment throughout a relationship. It doesn't have to be every day. It just has to be that moment coming up.
Yeah. And consistent, Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. I think these last two songs, we've got Grandmama and Adair County. Like I spoke on a few minutes ago, I am just absorbing at an enormous rate right now music and media that remind me of home or are from artists that are from home. And I do think genuinely probably 75% of that is, I don't know if I would use the word yearning or longing. I think that's part of it. But I think right now it's just super important for me to tap into that part of myself and to learn more about that. So, yeah, these two songs, they also touched me quite a bit because I experience similar feelings when I think about my family and where I'm from.
Yeah, I'm glad. And we're from a similar part. We're not far from each other, really, from where we're from. And like I said, for a long time in that relationship, 10 years with somebody and who really shit on the South and looked down on it, would never have wanted to go back to Kentucky with me, by any means, and would only ignorantly talk shit about it. I immediately reclaimed, in the frame right now, you can see one of my cowboy hats. Like, one of the things that I immediately reclaimed was, like, my culture, right? The food, the music, the dress. It was really important to me. Those are pieces of my identity that I gave up and didn't have to. I just did. And so I needed some grounding after that devastating moment. And so I road tripped up to Kentucky, and I went to Laurel Cove Festival. Shout out Laurel Cove. Not that they need any more pub. They sell out in like 10 seconds every year. Y'all have me back, by the way. I got to cover it 1 year, and then they haven't answered my emails for 2 years. They've also had it on the same day as Bonner.
For you to come back, please.
I would love to. I'd love to cover it. I'd love to play it. Both. I don't know. We could maybe do a really cool thing if anybody's listening, where, like, I could play, and then I could interview fellow artists, and we could even do, like, a podcast on stage. All kinds of cool shit. I love that place. It's magical. And also, while I'm acting like the organizers are listening right now.
We are
Stop.
friends with them, maybe.
Okay, all right. So if y'all are listening, stop putting it on the same weekend as Bonnaroo, goddammit.
Oh.
Because Bonnaroo is really important to me, and I love, and they do return my emails, and I get to cover it every year. So, I've built a whole community there. I want my cake, and I want to eat it too. Okay,
Yeah.
I want both communities, and I want to get to hang out with Libby at Laurel Cove.
Yes. So John, Grace, Jason, Parton, if you're listening, hear us out.
Seriously, y'all. Thank you for the one time you had me out. Have me back.
Yeah. I think
So
there's a
anyway-
need for that too there because I mean, are you familiar with hippies and cowboys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they weren't here this past year, and I know in previous years, or at least all the years I've been, they've been there. And I think, and I know they did like some interviews, they did some stuff like that there, but like there's a need for it, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, I don't know those guys well enough to know. I know it seems to me like, and I love this about Laurel Cove, is it seems it's such a homegrown thing, and it's such a like celebration of that part of the world. That's part of what draws all of us there, right? It's about the music, but it's really about the place, and then the people in that place, and so I could see where you might, they might feel like we already sell out. We don't really need press. We don't need to get the word out. Like everybody's fired up about it, waiting with bated breath for the lineup and all of that. So it's pretty cool what they've built. It's incredibly cool what they've built. Very special what they've built. And shout out to those guys. But yeah, so I went back I wanted to see the place where I was born, the place where my mom and grandma were born, and the place my dad was born. So my dad was born in Horse Cave, Kentucky. I was born in Elizabethtown and E-Town, and then my mom and my mom's whole side of the family is from Adair County, Columbia, and I wanted to see my great grandma's grave and my great grandma's grave, and because my great grandma and my great grandpa, mama and papa, who are name dropped, at least pronoun dropped in the song, they they were a big part of my upbringing too, and we would go visit them every summer. They died when I was fairly young. I guess Mama, didn't pass until I was like in high school. So I spent a lot of time with her, and so that part of the world was like a huge part of my upbringing. And we went to their grave. My uncle's best friend from high school, I got in contact with. He gave me a tour of the town. He's lived there his whole life. And Joe, he gave me a tour of the town, and then he took me to the cemetery where my mama and papa are buried. And next to my great grandmama's grave, Granny Pike, was my grandmama's grave, and my grandmama is alive and well in Ocala, Florida. She's 93 years old, but it has her name on it. It has my mom's name and uncle's name on the back. It says, parents to, or parent to, and it has their names on the back. And it has the date of her birth and a dash. And it really fucked me up because like my grandmama's my hero. The other song that we're talking about in this couple of songs is called Grandmama, and it's purely biography of her life, right? So I'm standing there looking at it, and it really forced me to process mortality. It forced me to process the idea that Grandmama's not always going to be here because she seems invincible, Yeah. My grandmother still mows her own lawn. She has trouble walking, and she still mows her own lawn. Like she's cut like that, She's a badass. She dealt with abusive men her whole life and swore off of them. And she has never, my grandmother has never had credit. Part of that is it was illegal for her to have credit, when she was young. But even now, she bought her house with cash after working at the Fruit of the Loom factory in Bowling Green, Kentucky for like 30 years, Yeah. I mean, she makes the best fried chicken ever. Sweet potato pie and biscuits and gravy, all the things I sing about in that song, Grandmama. Seeing her headstone forced me to go like, oh, this invincible person, this unassailable human being, character-wise, is not going to be here at some point. And this is the evidence of that. Like, this is a physical marker of her mortality. And I had honestly, like, I'm terrified of death, and I don't like... I try not to think about it, but I can't help it. I think about it all day, every day, and I have to work through it, and I have to make sure I'm not doing unhealthy things to cope with my fear of death. But it got me thinking about, like, what do I want for, like, at the end of my life someday, you know? And then also, what do my parents want?
Yeah.
And I didn't know the answer to that, you know? And I'm an only child. Like, it's going to all fall on me when my parents pass away. So that moment forced me to reckon with a couple of things. One is I had to have a hard conversation with my parents who are older and not in great health, especially my father. What do you want? And I can't afford to pay for it. So how are we going to pay for it?
Right.
Which was hard, you know, but I'm so glad I did it. And anybody who's listening, if you haven't had that conversation with your folks, if you're close with your folks and they're in your life, highly recommend having that conversation sooner rather than later. And asking them to, as much as possible, get it squared away, because it's a huge load off, right? And then what I realized was, like, I do care. I didn't think I cared. I thought, like, just fucking, you know, cremate me, put me in an urn somewhere. And then I realized, like, I don't know. I'm not an overly spiritual. I'm definitely not a religious person. I'm a somewhat spiritual person. But I don't, you know, I have complicated feelings about sort of what happens after this, and that's why I'm scared to die. But I realized, like, in the physical realm, I would like to be next to grandmama. You know, I would like to be back in Adair County where it all came from, where sort of like my DNA originated, you know? And so I got home from that trip, and I was listening to a lot of Will Johnson and a lot of Jason Molina. And a lot of their record Together, which is one of my all-time favorites. So I started just kind of playing around with weird chords. You know, most of my songs I do make interesting chord choices because I'm not overly trained in music. So, you know, a lot of my musician friends will kindly tell me that I make interesting choices in chord progressions. But this one I was just kind of fucking around, and it just sort of, I realized, like, I wanted that haunting, because it's a song about death, you know, and ultimately it's a song about place, and it's a song about reckoning with mortality, but it's a song about death, and I just felt like it needed to have that haunting kind of feel to it. And then also my vocals on that are a lot different from how I normally sing, and I took a lot of kind of risks on that, and playing it live is kind of exhausting. I love playing it live. I played almost every set, but it was a risk for me, and I think it also unlocked some things. Like, I ended up writing some other songs that have different themes, that have a similar feel to them, and the next record, whenever that is, will include a lot of that sort of evolution as I see it. So, Adair County, you know, might be my favorite thing I've written. It means. It probably means the most to me, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that was the first thing I noticed upon listening to this, was sonically it was different from the other 4 songs, but also I do watch your videos, you know, that you post of your, you know, whenever you perform. I consume a lot of what you do, and it is very different. And I think I can't say this with certainty because I'm not an artist, but I anticipate that pushing yourself and making yourself get outside of your comfort zone a little bit when it comes to, like, the literal, you know, chord progressions or sound, I think that's only going to make you better.
Yeah, I agree. And that's some feedback I've gotten from people that are kind of, you know, my mentors in the songwriting world and in the musical world. I was just talking recently, actually, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but Lauren, who's been playing saxophone with me, this is a relatively new development. I never heard saxophone on my songs. That's not something I thought was going to be a thing. And we met, and you know, I sent her some stuff, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I hear sax here, and she plays an aerophone, so she can kind of approximate a violin and a harmonica, both of which I have heard on my songs, like in my head, just never had anybody to do it, you know. But I have a new song called "Smoke Lingers," and I've been getting great feedback about it. It's a song that was born out of, like, this kind of wild dream I had about this woman in my life who, like, we went on a date, and then things, the timing wasn't right, and then we've become friends, but there's always like that underlying something's supposed to happen here, that whole thing. So I had this dream where we were supposed to procreate to perpetuate the human race. Like the human race had come down to us having sex, and we kept getting interrupted. Like the whole
That's funny.
the whole dream, right? It never happened. Sorry, everybody, if you're expecting a sexy ending, it didn't happen, right?
Oh, funny.
So anyway, I woke up the next morning and I was like thinking about her a lot, and so I wrote this song called "Smoke Lingers." And I don't know what I was thinking, Libby, but it's got like fucking 8 chords in it. And most of my songs are 3 chords in the truth, So I was telling Lauren about that, and she's very sober-minded and very intelligent and a really good communicator. And she was like, well, think about that like a musical challenge. You're growing. You're getting better. And every time I play that song live, I'm like, God damn it, Jason, why didn't you just put 3 chords in this thing?
That's funny.
But also in the back of my mind, she's right. Like I am getting better. And, you do get better the more you do things. And I am a better guitar player than I was 3 years ago or a year ago even. And I am a better singer and I'm a better writer. So, push yourself is what I have to tell myself.
Yeah, no, definitely. This is the last thing that I will ask you before we start wrapping things up. But I'm very curious to know your take. I'm obviously biased because I grew up in Appalachia, but to me, and I think this speaks to the entire state of Kentucky, there seems to be, and I'm sure this exists elsewhere, I don't think it's exclusive to Kentucky, but from my perspective, there is such a deep reverence of family and tradition and carrying things on and acknowledging, the people who came before you. Do you think that is like an especially Kentucky kind of thing?
I think it's especially an Appalachian thing. I think
Okay.
I think it's the whole region. Kentucky just happens to be a huge part of Appalachia, right? Like I think I truly believe, and this is taking my bias in favor of Kentucky, taking that hat off and just looking at things kind of like historically and also spiritually and musically. I mean, Edgar Casey and all kinds of wild stuff that happens there that seems like you can't really explain it. There's just a lot to Kentucky. I mean, to find me another place that has Keith Whitley, Tyler Childers, Loretta Lynn, Bill Monroe. We could do this all day, right?
Yeah.
Even fucking John Moreland has some roots there,
Yeah.
He's associated with Oklahoma, rightfully so, but like, and then I could go modern. We could do modern artists all day, right? I mentioned Tyler, but there's a whole bunch of folks that aren't as famous that you and I know and listen to. Nat Myers immediately comes to mind. Like, there's something special there that I can't put my finger on, but I think it has to do with just like, it's gonna sound kind of woo woo, but like, them mountains are old. Like that's just geologically that place, goes back a long time, and I think there is something to. So there's just been so much. There's so much history there. There's so much rich history in Kentucky, and yeah, I think there is something special to it, and I think that. That special familial bond and draw to the place permeates the culture, and it permeates the music in a huge way.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to be Keith Whitley or Tyler Childers or anything, but I do think that a huge part of what people connect with my music has to do with where I'm from. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Do you listen to Rich Henderson at all?
A little bit. I know that our corner of Twitter loves him, and I need to dive in more. I like what I've heard.
He is phenomenal, and he has it's not a new band. It's the same people he's played with forever, but Uniontown is their band, and they're kind of branding is that moving forward. But Rich is phenomenal. Anyone listening, I'm sure you probably listen to Rich, but please do. But we were this was after Laurel Cove 2 years ago, and we were at Jordan Lee King, who's a phenomenal local artist. He's starting to gain a lot of traction. We were at his house afterwards, and everyone was kind of sitting around jamming. Bedford, also a band out of Moorhead, who is funky and awesome, very cool. They were there, and everyone was just kind of sitting around playing and yapping and passing a joint around, And Rich said, we were doing kind of like group sing-alongs, and Rich turned to me and he's like, "Is everyone in Kentucky just born knowing how to sing a perfect third harmony?" And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe,
It's
So,
funny because, like I said, nobody in my family played, but music was always just in me. It was just always. I'm not technically very good or like trained in any way. That's not me being modest. It's just like the reality. But as far as the soul of it, the rhythm of it, I've always had an exceptional sense of rhythm. I've always kind of had a certain soul to me that people have identified and that I've been aware of. I think I think he's right. I think there is just something in us.
Yeah.
I don't, something about that place. Just it's innate.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I like to ask other people, and obviously you're a little biased too, but I know I'm certainly biased, and so I like to get other people's perspectives on that because, yeah, I definitely think that's the case.
And there's something that feels different, because it's home. I don't know if people probably feel this about any number of places, right? But when I get even north of Atlanta, if I'm driving, I road trip every summer up through Tennessee and try to get into Kentucky. But if I get north of Atlanta, which I do, like I said, once or twice a year, something feels different. I just feel different. I feel part of that's culturally. I mean, Florida's a pretty high stress place. It just is. Like, traffic's crazy and it's hot and people get mad. It's a different culture for sure. But I think there's something spiritual to it. I can't articulate that other than saying I think there's something spiritual to it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I can't, despite my qualms that I have with Kentucky and some of the decisions that have been made, I can't imagine myself anywhere else. And I, even just driving home to my apartment or driving back home to see my family, I am constantly in awe of how beautiful it is and how much I love it here. And so, yeah, I think the older I get, the more I definitely recognize that too.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we'll start to wrap up, and we've kind of walked through this album. I truly cannot stress to the listeners enough, please be on the lookout for what Jason has going on. All of these songs resonate with me in a big way, and I am super confident that will be the case for a lot of people. But what are we looking at time-wise for these? What kind of timeline are we on?
Great question, Libby. One of the things I've learned about this process is nothing happens in the time that you think it's going to happen. Life gets in the way, especially as an independent artist. It's, the people that are instrumental in putting this record together have whole other lives, myself included.
Yep.
It's mixed, it's mastered. There may be some adjustments on the mastering, but Will Payne Harrison did an outstanding job mastering it. Chris Belcher did an incredible job producing, engineering, and mixing the record. And it's pretty. The music itself is done pretty much. Like this, the files are ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's all this other stuff. So I mean, I have the artwork concept. It just needs to get executed.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting on that, and then we should be able to get the first single out, which will be Brenton Butler, out at the end of the month.
Very cool.
And we're recording this on August 9th, so my goal is to get it out by the end of the month. Right now, if folks want to hear a taste of Brenton Butler, you can go to Bandcamp, jasonearlemusic.bandcamp.com, and you can get the unmastered version of Brenton Butler over there. And you can listen to snippets of all the songs, live versions of all the songs on Jason Earle Music Instagram. Mm-hmm. I also have other socials, but the Instagram is what I've kind of been focused on because, again, all my stuff is DIY. So, the Marinade is a huge focus of mine as well. And, that is a weekly, at this point in my life, endeavor. So I'm trying to build all the socials around Jason Earle Music as well. So folks follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky and wherever you prefer to consume social media, because I have all those things for Jason Earle Music. But you can get a taste of the first single, Brenton Butler, which will sound a little bit different, but not a whole lot different, over on Bandcamp right now. And then the goal is to get the whole record out. We'll release a single in August, a single in September. And then the goal is that in October we would release the whole record and then have a big release party and, blow it out and everything. So I'm also, like, for folks listening, if you have venues that you're connected with, or if you book shows or whatever, I'm spending the next couple of months really leaning into creative work. This is a decision I came to just a few days ago. Teaching in Florida has become untenable. I am going to do some online part-time teaching, and I'm going to be really leaning into the creative work. So I have Patreon and Substack. The same content is posted on each one. If you are interested in the process of making records, songwriting, any of that stuff, I've been doing a lot of, behind the veil stuff about the process over there, talking about how I'm making songs, how songs are coming along, sharing new songs on Patreon and Substack. So I'd love for folks to check that out as well, because that's been a lot of fun. I also get to connect with people in that way. It cuts through the noise of Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and all those things, and gets right to the, like, who is this man and what's he making,
Yep.
And it gives me a chance to bounce ideas and build community over there as well, right? So
Yeah.
as far as timeline goes, first single out by the end of the month is the goal. I know it's been a long process. It's just crazy. It's like every time you get, and I'm sure people who've done this before can attest, every time you get to, like, the next step, you're like, all right, here we go. There's another hurdle that I didn't realize,
Yeah.
And no matter how many friends I have who've told me the process, no matter how many people I've interviewed about the process, like, everyone's journey is different, right? Like, it's different if you have a record label versus if you're doing it on your own. It's different if you have a band versus if it's going under your own name. And there's just so many variables and decisions you have to make. And I would imagine once I've gotten this done that I'll be able to reflect on a lot of it, and the next process should be a little bit easier. But there's just some choices that I have to make that I didn't anticipate being as challenging as they are. And so I've tried to pump my brakes a little bit, because I wanted to get this motherfucker out, like, in March, right? Like, I was ready. My huge goal was to get it out by the summer. But the feedback I keep getting from people is like, all right, you've made this thing, you're super proud of it, and you should be, it's good, but, like, take your time, right? And get it out there. So, this is the first bit of press that we're doing for it. I've got some other things lined up we're going to start doing. So the first single, Brenton Butler, should be on all streaming platforms at the end of August. You can listen to the song right now on Bandcamp, and I am so stoked to get these songs out to everybody.
Yeah, I am extremely excited for you, Jason. I mean, back when you first mentioned this album, I mean, it's been months and months and months ago, I was immediately like, all my chips are on Jason's side. I'm rooting for him. I respect and admire the art he creates in every facet. So, no, I'm 1,000% in your corner, and I will be sharing the good word. And also, just to touch on Bandcamp, Patreon, Substack, things like that, I have people who live in areas where there's not a ton of venues or music that comes their way. And it's those outlets are a really great way to support these artists directly that are going to have more of an impact than some streaming numbers. Do that too, of course, but really phenomenal ways to support independent artists.
Yeah, I mean, I think I take a lot of my musical, the business side of it. I take a lot of those cues from BJ Barham, going back to American Aquarium and BJ. And what he always says is, buy the CD. He sells all his CDs. You can buy any American Aquarium CD for $5 plus shipping. $5. He's like, buy the CD and then stream the fuck out of it, right? Yeah. Like, because streaming is just there's $0, right? Like, especially if you're using Spotify. Fun fact, anybody listening, maybe I'll put it to you, Libby. Do you know which streaming service pays the best?
Is it? I don't know. Is it Tidal? Does
Great
Tidal
guess.
do-
Tidal
I don't
does
think I know.
much better.
What is
The
it?
answer to that question is, of course, Napster.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, which blows people's minds usually because Napster was like where we used to pirate music back in the day.
Yeah, that's exactly
right?
like a LimeWire kind of deal.
Yeah, it was like the precursor to LimeWire. Yeah. Metallica famously sued Napster for copyright infringement.
Right.
But yeah, streaming has its place. I use Tidal. I'm a Tidal evangelist. I also think it's a better product. I think Spotify is kind of like Buc-ee's, where like people think it's cool and it's not that cool.
Yeah.
But they're just a garbage company. I mean, they just awful what they do to artists, awful the things they invest in. These AI military contracts that they have. I mean, fuck Spotify.
Yeah.
I very rarely use it, and I understand people have their whole catalogs there, but you can move all that over to Tidal or Apple Music. Like, they have interfaces. You don't have to lose your playlists. The cost is pretty similar, and I think it's a better quality product. The sound quality is better on Tidal and Apple. And then there's another one, starts with a Q. Somebody is screaming at their computer box right now the name of it, but there's one that starts with a Q that supposedly is really good too. But I switched over to Tidal years ago, and can't recommend it enough.
Yep.
I gotta quit giving free pub. I gave free pub to so many. Nobody's paying for me for this shit. Tidal, get at me.
No, that's funny. All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much again. Everyone have their eyes open. Check out his socials. Keep up with the releases he's going to have coming up. All really phenomenal stuff. And yeah, just take care of yourself. Be good to one another. Approach this with an open mind, and I promise you're certainly going to learn something. I know I'm pretty tapped in, and I still learned a lot just from listening to these songs. So it's a phenomenal way to do that. And support your independent scenes as always.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Libby. And thank you for your continued support of the art that I make. I mean, you really are truly so supportive, and I'm incredibly grateful for you. I'm incredibly grateful for that whole Western Grunge community and all your listeners. So just thank you.
Of course, yeah. And if you guys enjoyed this, please do share with your mommy, your daddy, your auntie, your uncle. You can always put them onto something that may change their lives. And that's been the case for me and plenty of other people around. So thank you guys again. And on that note, I've had all I can handle. I hope you're happy, and good night.